Hey there, action enthusiasts. I'm Alex, and today we're diving into an adrenaline-pumping recap of No Escape, a cinematic thrill ride that hit screens in 1994. The film is set in the year 2022 when the international prison system is controlled by private corporations, turning prisons into lucrative businesses. In a flashback scene, a group of soldiers, including John Robbins, marches on. Robbins, troubled by orders to kill innocent civilians in Benghazi, ends up killing his commanding officer. Subsequently, he is sentenced to life in prison for his crime. Robbins has previously managed to escape from 2 maximum security level 5 prisons and is now being transported to Leviticus, a futuristic level 6 prison. The arrival at Leviticus is impressive, as prisoners are transported via a streamlined monorail towering over the desert sands, resembling a futuristic city. The prison's warden makes it clear to the new arrivals that escape is impossible, and that death is the only way out. Robbins, known as prisoner number 2675, is summoned by the warden, who informs him of the severe restrictions in place, such as no future contacts, visitors, phone calls, or letters. This restriction infuriates Robbins, who is then placed in a cell. Inside, he meets another inmate who shares some food and tells him about the dreaded prison, Absalom, a jungle island where the worst criminals are sent. Later that night, Robbins wakes up to find his cellmate missing. Subsequently, he is led to a torture chamber where his cellmate is tied up as punishment for sneaking food into the prison. The warden orders Robbins to electrocute his cellmate, but he refuses, leading to a confrontation where he briefly holds the warden at gunpoint. However, Robbins is beaten by the guards, convincing the warden that he poses a significant threat. As a result, he decides to exile Robbins to the jungle island of Absalom. Robbins is flown to Absalom in a helicopter. Upon arrival, the warden orders him to be thrown into Sector 4, controlled by a group of prisoners known as the Outsiders. As Robbins is ejected from the helicopter, he hears ominous sounds approaching. Fearing danger, he runs into the jungle to hide but is soon captured by the barbaric Outsiders, led by the sociopathic Walter Marek, who enforces the brutal law of the jungle. Robbins is restrained and taken to the Outsiders' camp, which resembles an abandoned island resort, complete with dilapidated houses and a swimming pool. The Outsiders initially take Robbins' clothes and belongings, but Walter Marek intervenes and orders them returned. Later, Robbins is brought to a pit where Marek compels him to fight one of his men for amusement. Robbins quickly and effortlessly defeats his opponent, impressing Marek. Marek offers Robbins a high-ranking position within his gang, but Robbins surprises everyone by knocking Marek into the pool, seizing his rocket launcher, and making a daring escape from the Outsiders' camp. In the subsequent scene, we witness Marek and his gang searching the jungle to capture Robbins. They eventually track him down and corner him near a cliff. Robbins is struck in the neck by a dart from a blowgun and falls into the river below. The Insiders, a group of prisoners led by a terminally ill doctor and their wise leader father, retrieve Robbins from the river. Meanwhile, the warden learns that Robbins has been taken by the Insiders. Robbins regains consciousness and explores the Insiders' camp. To his surprise, he finds various elements of civilization, including blacksmith shops, communal showers, and even a small distillery. The Insiders are self-sufficient, producing their own clothing and considering pottery. They have established a cooperative, autonomous community with laws opposing the tyranny of the Outsiders. Robbins meets Father, who introduces him to Hawkins, the Insider gang's chief of security. He shares his story of escaping the Outsiders, which impresses Father. Later, Robbins realizes the Insiders are significantly outnumbered by the Outsiders and is the sole survivor from Marek's camp. Father offers him a place within the Insiders, but Robbins declines, expressing his desire to leave the island. Father instructs Hawkins to take him to Dysart, the camp's sole engineer, who examines the rocket launcher stolen from Marek by Robbins. Dysart and Hawkins explain that they are 200 miles from the mainland, with gunships patrolling 50 miles off the coast, and infrared satellite surveillance monitoring thermal activity. Escaping the island undetected seems impossible. In the next scene, Robbins meets Casey, a young man convicted for a kidnapping that resulted in accidental double felony murder when the hostages died. Impressed by Robbins' escape from Marek, Casey desires to be his friend, but Robbins initially rejects him, telling him to stop following. Later, Robbins is seen sitting on a cliff overlooking the sea. While gazing at the sea, Robbins observes an animated graphic of a small, gray, slug-like escape pod traveling until it's destroyed. Casey eventually joins Robbins after following him, and they strike up a friendship as Casey shares stories about his past and life on the island. Casey introduces Robbins to X, who offers merchandise in exchange for Robbins' boots. Robbins, however, inquires about a boat. Later, Robbins notices something amiss with the Insider gang and follows them into the jungle. Unfortunately, Hawkins apprehends him and returns him to the camp. The following morning, Robbins and Casey have breakfast and learn more about each other. They spot a supply helicopter in the air, but Casey informs Robbins that the drop is only for outsiders, not insiders. Casey introduces Robbins to Killian, another insider, who offers him his homemade beverage. The camp's bell rings, prompting everyone to rush to the gate, where the king exiles a gang member for failing in his duties. Robbins appears to challenge the king's rule. In a separate scene, the outsiders argue with their leader, Marek, about the food drop they received earlier, leading to a murder. Later, the insiders celebrate Christmas. Marek's gang launches a surprise attack on the insider camp, setting parts of it on fire with flaming arrows. However, the damage is minimal the next day. The two gangs engage in bloody hand-to-hand combat. Father hides in his room, but Marek captures him. Robbins intervenes and saves the father from being killed. Marek flees with his gang. The father reveals to Robbins that such attacks occur 4 or 5 times a year. Later, Killian informs Robbins that the warden wants the insiders and outsiders to fight and die in battles. The next morning, Robbins runs to the cliff near the sea and discovers the father, Hawkins, and Dysart watching a boat leaving the island. Robbins learns that the insiders secretly built and launched a scan-proof boat to inform the outside world about Absalom. Unfortunately, attack helicopters detect and destroy the boat, causing father to suspect an informant among them. In the subsequent scene, Robbins arrives at Dysart's house. He finds a new boat and requests a seat. Robbins agrees to retrieve a distributor, a part he saw in Marek's camp, in exchange for passage for himself and Casey. Casey tries to persuade Robbins to let him accompany him to Marek's camp, but Robbins declines. Robbins is seen approaching the outsiders. Despite his denial, Casey pursues him but is quickly apprehended. Robbins infiltrates the outsiders' camp and obtains the engine component. He then causes a distraction in the outsiders' camp and rescues Casey, who is being held hostage by the outsiders. When Robbins and Casey attempt to flee, they are apprehended by the outsiders' gang leader, Marek. Marek throws Robbins into the pool and forces him to fight Casey to the death. Casey kills himself by impaling himself on Robbins' weapon, knowing they can't both escape. After some time, we see that Robbins is about to be executed by Marek. Fortunately, Robbins avoids execution with the help of an insider spy, which irritates Marek. In the following scene, Robbins hands over the distributor to Dysart at father's house where father is very ill. Robbins informs him and the other members of the insider gang about Marek's attack. Soon after, the insider gang devises a strategy to protect Marek. Robbins convinces the insiders to abandon their camp despite being outnumbered, but not before it is strewn with booby traps. Later that night, Hawkins tells Robbins about how he spent 13 years building that place and cannot just abandon it. Robbins informs Hawkins that he will remain behind to use the stolen rocket launcher to detonate an incendiary bomb. The next morning, Robbins finds that everyone in the insiders' camp has left. He goes to see father when he learns he is dying. Father asks him to take his place when he dies, but Robbins refuses and says he intends to flee the island. In the following scene, Robbins tells father about his past and the reasons he must flee the island. The next morning, Marek and his outsiders gang arrive at the insiders' camp. As they enter the insiders' camp, Marek discovers that no one is present. However, Robbins is waiting for them with a rocket launcher. Shortly after, Marek approaches Robbins intending to kill him, but Robbins launches a rocket, resulting in the death of most of the outsiders, except their leader, Marek. Back at the prison, the warden becomes suspicious of unusual activity on the island and orders his men to prepare a helicopter for immediate deployment to the island. The remaining outsider members attempt to flee from the insiders' camp, but Marek manages to survive and remain hidden among the insiders. In the following scene, father visits Robbins, and suddenly Marek arrives and tries to murder father. In the ensuing conflict, father valiantly sacrifices himself to protect Robbins from Marek. After a fierce battle with Robbins, Marek is finally defeated. Robbins soon discovers that the new boat has been destroyed and finds evidence of the king's involvement in Dysart's murder. Meanwhile, the warden is en route to the island. Robbins realizes that the king is a traitor and forces him to provide the warden with new landing coordinates for his helicopter. When the helicopter lands, Robbins and his group take control, eliminating all the guards and ejecting the warden. The king and the warden are left behind as unseen outsiders close in on them. In the film's closing scene, Robbins is observed escaping the island in the helicopter.